Hello, everybody. Just giving you a bit of a different style of learning today. Maybe just exposing you to what your post secondary career might look like. I know when I was coming up, this is how we got a lot of our online classes during COVID. But some university college teachers might still do this, they may not. But today we're looking at social identity. The goal is that you will watch this video, take your own personal DIY note, and then submit it once we're done. So today we're going to dive into the fascinating topic of social identity, and it's all about understanding how we see ourselves and others in society. So how do we look at identity? So really the definition is looking at that it's basically the characteristics, beliefs, values, and personality traits that define who we are, either as individuals or as groups. There are types of identity. So there's social identity. So this is your sense of who you are based on the groups you belong to. And then personal identity. This is the unique way you define yourself. So a little bit of a difference there. Once again, social being based on groups you belong to, whereas personal is looking at how you would define yourself and your identity. So for example, one person might talk about their family, religion, and hobbies when describing themselves, while another might focus on their race, neighborhood, or job. Your personal identity, consists of all things that you believe make you you. So some social constructions to really break it down. Identity is made up of key aspects like social class, ethnicity, sex, age, gender, and religious beliefs. There are categories within this. So ascribed identity are aspects given by society like your social class, ethnicity, nationality, and gender, where there's achieved identity, and these aspects you choose or achieve, like your social status, religious beliefs, family role, and relationship status. Don't get those two confused. I know they both start with A, but ascribed is one, achieved is different. So sociologists do look at this concept of identity to be a social construction in the individual or collective representation of social categories. Theorists like Henry Tajfel and John Turner proposed that social identity theory are an interplay between person and social groups. So they really believe that identity theory helps to bring everything together. So there are studies how individuals, so those two men, Henry Tajfel and John Turner, came up with the social identity theory. So going back to that previous slide, which looks at how we create and define our identity through the groups we belong to. They looked at studies on how to create and define identity through social group members. There were stages within this study. So categorization, this is where we assign people to social groups like students. Identification, which is here we adopt the identity and norms of the group, which gives us a sense of belonging. And then comparison, which finally we compare our groups to other groups. So in group versus out group. So we will see this whole kind of concept of in groups and out groups. In groups, this is where groups where we feel we belong to. Out groups this is the group where we don't belong. So we're not talking about who's popular and who's not. It's just where do we feel like we fit in versus where we don't feel like we fit in. And there is some bias in this because we tend to view our in group positively and look for more negative aspects in groups we don't belong to. So definitely that whole idea of, if we think of Mean Girls, the plastics being the in group, whereas there's other out groups, and they viewed everybody negatively. That's a good representation there, but we really need to make sure that we recognize those biases in ourselves, and that even though we're not part of those out groups, that they still have purpose and bring a sense of belonging to those who may be a member of that group. George Herbert Mead looked at the concept of identity. So in his development, according to Mead, identity isn't something we're born with. We develop it over time through social interactions. He looked at the idea of role playing and that by taking on the perspectives of others, we form our sense of self. And he also looked at the idea of language, that with language, it is crucial because it helps us communicate and negotiate meanings with others. Oftentimes, we hear the word language, and back when Mead was making this theory, it could be safe to assume he looked at language at the sense of verbal language, but we have come to know now in 2025 there are very different ways of language when it comes to communicating. So Mead looked at the idea and concept of I and me. So me is the idea that this is the socialized part of ourselves shaped by social norms and expectations. So this is the part that you may show more on the outside, where I is spontaneous creative part of ourselves and it's not constrained by social norms. So that's your more outgoing, outspoken, nerdy, whatever, however you want to use adjectives to describe yourself, but that's what the I is. Oops, one too far. So, in the end, me believed that me and I work together to create a sense of identity. Me provides stability and continuity, whereas I provides a sense of flexibility and creativity, which allows us to generate new ideas and actions that may challenge social norms and expectations. Whereas me is stable. That is our stable part of us that will stay stable over time. Oops, once again, there we go. So, our identity is not fixed, but a product of our environment, as it is influenced by environment and it is performed in the context of a larger social scene. An example of this is thinking about how we dress, speak, and interact with others. That's all a performance. And there's the idea of importance too, as understanding identity helps us comprehend social, economic, and political issues. And that is what really helps us understand all those structural forms within our society and how it impacts our identity. As we move through various stages of life, our identity changes in responses to our experiences. So, for instance, our identity as a student might shift when you enter the workforce, or it might shift again if you decide to become a parent, and that your identity as a parent might change as your child grows up and goes through the stages of development. So, your sense of identity will always shift to fit whatever stage of life you are in. And that is the end of the slides for today. So, as I said at the beginning, please make sure you look at and create a slideshow, or not a slideshow, sorry, a DIY note, and you submit that either virtually through the Dropbox or handwritten.